It seems that Tucker Carlson is having some kind of woke epiphany. Note that is sarcasm. Let's take a look.
I'll never forget, maybe 10 years ago, you had this head of the Labor Party who was, an old leftist, old kind of pro-Soviet leftist. I didn't have much in common with him. I never really thought about him. But the one issue on which he was kind of different from, the people who paid for the party was on Israel. He was skeptical of British support for the state of Israel. And I've never seen a man slandered like he was slandered. Now, again, it's not my role to defend him. I'm not British and I'm not, an old leftist, but that guy was basically driven out of public life. And after that happened, the Labor Party just kind of swung into alignment with the Conservatives and with reform. And basically the entire British political establishment is on the same page. Don't talk about Gaza. Israel's our closest ally. Shut up, Nazi. Am I imagining this?
No, you're portraying it exactly as it was. And I, I'm not a politician. I've got no political agenda. My role, I believe, is to bear witness to what I've seen out there. But it seems very, very clear to me that the weaponization of anti-Semitism is rife through our society.
Yes.
And is being used to shut people up. And, I've got to know Jeremy Corbyn quite well in the last 2 or 3 years. I've shared platforms with him.
I was referring to Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah. And having spoken, I don't believe there's an anti-Semitic cell in his body. I think he is passionately supportive of the Palestinians, and that is what his motivation has been. He tried to pass a bill through Parliament to get a tribunal to investigate what's been going on. It was clearly turned down. He ran his own independent tribunal to which I contributed my evidence as well. But there was evidence from a whole host of people. It's a publication worth looking at. And it speaks volumes about the people who have witnessed what's going on out in Gaza and are desperate to get the truth out there, what's really going on.
So he's finally agreeing on something that those on the left have believed for years, that Jeremy Corbyn was slandered for his defense of Palestine. Now, why is it Tucker Carlson is only just deciding to come out and say this? Well, in recent months, Carlson has done a complete U-turn in his support for Donald Trump, even apologizing for misleading people, saying he feels betrayed by the current administration's actions in the Middle East, specifically the war on Iran. Speaking to the Wall Street Journal, Carlson said, "I don't hate Trump. I hate this war and the direction that the US government is taking. I feel betrayed." Despite being one of Trump's biggest supporters in the run-up to his second term and acting as an informal advisor to the president, Carlson has now become one of Trump's biggest critics, saying he has moved away from his initial America First promise and that Trump has been influenced by neoconservatives and Israel. Speaking to Israeli media last week, Carlson said one of his biggest issues is that the US funds Israel's military. "The reason that I have cause to comment on this and say that it's wrong is that I'm paying for it. There's no reason the United States should be sending any money at all to Israel, and particularly not to its military. If Hamas does something bad, it's bad. It doesn't justify Israel doing the same bad thing, nor does it justify the US. You can't kill people who haven't done anything wrong." He then goes on to say he believes Trump gave in to pressure from Netanyahu. On February 28th, the US followed Israel into this war, and the US Secretary of State said that there was no choice and that Israel chose the timing. This is the definition of control. So my question is, why did Trump let a nation of 9 million people drag a nation of 350 million people into a war that would change its future and that is bad for the United States? There is growing speculation that Carlson may even be preparing for his own presidential run in 2028. Author of Carlson's latest biography, Jason Zengerli, recently said, "I don't really think of Carlson as a media figure anymore. I think he's doing something very different. He's a movement leader. I think the Iran war sets up Tucker, especially if the war goes badly, really well to run for president in 28. He can hang that war around JD Vance's neck and Marco Rubio's neck, and he can say, I was against this from the start. I'm the true heir of MAGA." Now, let's bring Curtis back in. There's quite a lot to unpack there. So let's go back to his comments about Jeremy Corbyn. What did you make of that clip?
Well, of course, he's entirely right. Jeremy Corbyn, as we know, is one of the most, if not the most, slandered man in history. He wasn't just criticized for his policy; he was called a raging anti-Semite. I believe a former conservative even said that Jeremy Corbyn might bring back concentration camps, and that multiple outlets said that Jewish people should be living in fear if Jeremy Corbyn became prime minister. Like, the level of slander and smears was truly disgusting, and it would be ignorant to say that it didn't make a difference. In fact, had we not had this level of smears against Jeremy Corbyn, he could have been prime minister. Tucker Carlson obviously realizes that, and he's realized it through Israel. We call him a broken clock because he said look, when it comes to Israel, when it comes to the war in Iran, Tucker Carlson is absolutely right. And the reason why is because Tucker Carlson's kind of your classic conservative. For a long, long time, the political establishment have been littered with neoliberals and neoconservatives. And that's what MAGA are, by the way. Donald Trump and Marco Rubio and all those around him are neocons, despite the fact that they promised that the era of neoconservatism was going to be over. I mean, the way they campaigned in the presidential election, Trump's team, it was ends the forever wars. Kamala Harris is going to take us to war. We're not going to do that. Trump is going to be the most peaceful president. If you looked at Trump's track record the first time he was in office, he was extremely hawkish. He was extremely neoconservative. So I'm not surprised he lied. And of course, as president the second time round, he's been extremely neoconservative. Tucker Carlson is a classic conservative in which, when it comes to war, like, he's at least principled on that, which is why he can criticize and call out Donald Trump and the MAGA project for being pro-war, and being incredibly disappointed. And the same goes for Israel. Having said that, though, Tucker Carlson is not rehabilitated. He's still a very, very right-wing figure. It was recent, I think on a podcast, very recent, that he talked about the white genocide, which is a far-right conspiracy theory, and kind of probably could potentially go into anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. I'm not saying that Tucker Carlson did an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But what I'm saying is this guy is not to be trusted. He's not a good person or a good political figure, but he's saying something right about Israel and the war. And the big problem here is for the liberal establishment. The big problem is for the Democrats, for example, because the Democrats are so bought and paid for by the corporations, but also by Israel, that the fact that they treat people to their left, Democrats as well, to their left, who call out the genocide, who call out income inequality, harsher than their supposed real enemies, exposes them. Like Hassan Piker, for example. Hassan Piker has called out Israel's genocide for a long, long time, and the Democrats have spent a lot of time attacking Hassan Piker. In fact, they see Hassan more as an enemy than MAGA or people like Tucker Carlson. Or to be fair, they probably see Tucker Carlson as the real enemy because he's spoken out against Israel. But MAGA, for example, because at the end of the day, Democrats attacking Republicans and Republicans attacking Democrats, it's all a circus. They're all bought and paid for by the same people. They're bought by Israel. They're bought by corporations. And the Democrats would much rather lose to Donald Trump and other Republicans than to win on a left-wing ticket. Because if you're a Democrat, you're a corporate Democrat, if you were to, if your party doesn't win government, you're still in a very good position. And the party machinery doesn't want to lose its donors as well. So they would rather keep on to their donors and keep preaching to people who don't want to listen about how Kamala Harris, it was her turn, almost kind of like Hillary Clinton. But they're not going to have a comprehensive economic plan and still apologize for Israel. The voters are going to reject it. And I think they know that, but they would rather lose than have someone like Bernie Sanders, who, again, I think he's not that good on Israel. I mean, he's better than probably most people, but I think he's still kind of a liberal Zionist. But at least he's called out the genocide now, finally, and he doesn't endorse Netanyahu. Like, I think he'd be materially better for for Palestinians than a lot of other people. But I digress. But what the Democrats are doing and the liberal establishment, they're almost goading people to be pushed into right-wing circles. Because if no one on the liberal side is going to call out the genocide, and the only person who's got a big platform is Tucker Carlson, what do you think is going to happen? People are going to flock to Tucker Carlson. And the danger is that they start listening to his other stuff. They start listening to his very, 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 very right-wing arguments. They might start believing there's a white genocide. And Democrats don't care. They are happy to potentially create a new generation of very right-wing people. They are happy for Tucker Carlson to influence younger people as long as the Democrat machine does not capitulate on Israel, or does capitulate on Israel, and doesn't reject corporate donors, because the machine, the democratic machine, is still going to be protected. They're still going to be well funded. But the danger here is people are going to get pushed into this. Same with Candace Owens. She's a very right-wing figure. I think she's a terrible person. I think she has awful views, but she's right on Israel. And right now, that's the thing they're talking about the most. And for those people out there who aren't that political, who don't know much about these people's views on other things, but are hearing Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson saying, wow, they're calling out the Israeli genocides, then people might listen. Especially when Tucker Carlson is now talking about a left-wing figure in Jeremy Corbyn. He's speaking about Jeremy Corbyn, and now potentially he could run for president. By the way, I think Tucker Carlson poses a real threat. I think he could absolutely win as president. 100%. You know, a lot of the media class like to think that Gaza is a fringe issue. They like to think that, oh, only the Muslim community cares about it. No, we all care about it. I remember a BBC, I think it's a BBC, it was a radio interview with Zach Polanski, and the interviewer said, is Gaza on the ballot for the local elections? And the media likes to be very disparaging and say, well, this is local elections, not Gaza. But speaking to candidates who ran for election in the locals, they told me Gaza comes up on the doorstep unprompted. It comes up all the time, regardless of who they are, regardless of what religion they belong to, race, gender. It comes up a lot. So if you've got a Tucker Carlson figure who's willing to defend a left-wing figure like Jeremy Corbyn, is willing to call out Israel's genocide and be truly anti-war, in which MAGA lied about, he could be extremely successful.
I think I agree with you there in terms of Tucker Carlson actually being a real possibility for 2028. I think he has, like you kind of said, he's clearly staunchly MAGA. He is incredibly right wing. That's not going to change, but obviously that appeals to, unfortunately, quite a big part
I
of...
wouldn't, to be honest, I wouldn't describe him as MAGA, because MAGA is a cult. Tucker Carlson is not in a cult. He's a, like I said, a classic conservative. I mean, he's more right wing than that. But MAGA is a cult. MAGA isn't anti-war, for example. MAGA isn't pro-free speach. If that was the case, then most of the base of Donald Trump would have turned on him. Donald Trump cancelling, not Jimmy Kimmel, the other guy, the comedy shows because they criticize Fallon, maybe Jimmy Fallon. One of these people, anyway. A subpoena has been sent to Hassan Piker. Like, Trump has been incredibly authoritarian, despite MAGA saying, "Oh, we love free speech," and Trump has been incredibly hawkish and has brought us into another war, the Iran war. And MAGA, who said before the election, "Oh, we're really anti-war," they haven't turned on him. So I don't think that Tucker Carlson is MAGA. MAGA is a cult. Tucker Carlson is his own thing, and which means he's far more dangerous, because I think the MAGA aura is actually losing, and JD Vance, who probably wants to be president in the future, I know you've got hope now. There's also the fact that Tucker Carlson is an excellent communicator, because he's worked in the media. He worked for Fox News, now he's a podcaster. Like, he can speak to people as well. And I think that's a skill that should not be overlooked.
That's what I was gonna go on to say, is that he could potentially kind of swoop in and pick up these like lost MAGA voters that maybe aren't actually, I don't know, part of the cult like you're saying, but agree with Trump on a lot of things that he says, or at least the very right wing kind of section of American politics. But yeah, don't agree with this war. Don't like the fact that obviously Trump said that he was all about no new wars, America first, going to put American people first, and he's completely gone back on that. And clearly, people are starting to see that he is very easily swayed. So I think Tucker Carlson really could, swoop in there and
Yeah,
to
I
really
think
speak to the masses.
I think he could pick up Democrat voters who refuse to turn out for Kamala Harris. I think he could win the overwhelming majority of independents. So I think Tucker Carlson has a real shot, which is dangerous. And again, if liberals actually cared about stopping the right wing and the far right, which they don't, if they did, the Democrats would put up a solid candidate. They put up a candidate who's willing to take on the billionaires, willing to take on the corporations, and willing to take on the terrorist state of Israel, which they won't do. So they're throwing the future to right-wing forces. They threw it to Donald Trump. It's crazy that Trump got elected again, but Kamala Harris was pathetic. They stifled their only kind of popular guy, Tim Walz. He was on a streak when he was calling Republicans weird, and then they told him, don't do that. And then he got cucked out by Kamala Harris and the DNC. And the Democrats are going to do the same mistake over and over again, because it's not that they haven't learned from their lessons. They know fully well. They know if they were to offer Medicare for all, no new wars, and no bowing down to Israel, they know that will be a popular thing. But they'd lose their donors and their connections, and they would rather lose than lose the infiltration of corporations in the Democratic Party.